Take the year off. So if you look at the picture on the right, you know, setting goals, you can see the 3 planes flying high. But can anybody guess where that photograph was taken or when? It is Martin O'Brien. And it is actually the picture taken on the city's first birthday. So that was pretty cool that we actually had those 3 jets fly over for the first birthday. So anyhow, this is this is a topic that I wanted to bring back to the council. The item was first heard by the city council in 2011 when we established goals and policies. I just wanted to bring back a couple discussion points, and so I'll break this presentation in 2 sections. The first section will have us revisit and talk about the merits of a CFD or the disadvantages of a CFD, and whether we would entertain the formation of CFDs to fund capital facilities. Then the second part, after we have that discussion, I'll get into just some of the little ministerial type changes and an update to our goals and policies. So with that, the first item is today the city has deferred developers from the city forming the CFD and funding their impact fees, funding their capital projects. We've basically said we're not interested. I think that has been the tenor of the community for the last decade. What we've found that has happened is where we thought we might be protecting our residents from having to pay a community facilities district special tax for these things, if we didn't lead the administration, then they would go to Lake Elsinore Unified School District or Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District. The photograph is below. That's the section that we were just talking about earlier, Bundy Canyon. And that developer first came to the city and sought forming a CFD. We went through, we looked at the numbers. Staff made the opinion and the recommendation that we should not pursue being the administrator. So they went to EVMWD. As EVMWD was going through the proceedings, this district would have been formed last year. Fortunately, from staff's perspective, we have a good working relationship with EVMWD. We found parameters within that district that we didn't feel was ideal or met the best needs of the city of Wildomar. And so we asked them to put that on hold until we got it resolved. But the point in fact is, there are pros and cons if the city is the administrator. Impact fees, capital facilities costs are the types of things that the other districts are financing. The city doesn't have the ability to optimize that debt proceeds. And what does that mean? That means that there are costs that go into forming the district, and then there are certain revenues that come out of the district or a development agreement. Those proceeds go to district facilities, and they don't necessarily come back to the city of Wildomar. Administration, for example, all the different things that have to be done for the administration, there's a fee that's paid to the city. If the districts form them, there's still actions that we have to do, but we don't get an administrative fee. So that would be a disadvantage to the city. If the district revenues for formation, there's proceeds, they have a pay-as-you-go provision. And this isn't meant tonight to get into the depth of a CFD. I'm just kind of hitting a few highlights, and we can talk about that later. But any proceeds of pay-as-you-go, one of the requirements is that you have to have a special maximum tax, 110% of the debt that's incurred. As any one of those years go along, you can use those proceeds to start, implementing the project. You can help with the cash flow of delivery of a project. There's a handful of things that we could control if we were the administrator. We're not able to do that if the district does the project. There are disadvantages. Projects that, if they're not formed properly and if a project can't be sustained, can enter into delinquencies. Tax delinquencies could add up pretty quick, up to 28% in the first year. They could lead to foreclosures. They could cause the restructuring of a bond debt. all that takes proceeds away from delivering community capital projects. So if the city's not the administrator, obviously the risk stays with the districts. However, if the city was to contract with a specialized consultant team, there are specialized consultant teams that we've worked with over the years. I have, at least in other agencies. They can structure this so that it would be of interest to a bond type person. So those are the general pros and cons. There's a lot of depth to a CFD. There's a lot of things to consider if the city wanted to move forward. And I think tonight, all I really wanted to do is highlight a project down below. That is a project that could come back to the city. We have the opportunity to talk about administering that. And what it would do is the section in the farm where the tide S curve, that is a condition of that development to improve Bundy Canyon. And the developer is looking to build that section when we build our section, and the way to do that would be to have a CFD bond, and then those proceeds would help pay for his share of the improvements. As just an order of magnitude, if this district was to go form through EVMWD, there would probably be a little over $4 million available just to build that section of road. If that project went through the city, it would be closer to about $5 million. So that just kind of gives you a flavor as to where those proceeds go and how those monies stay within the community. So really, I guess there's kind of 5 questions that staff would like to get from the council. You know, is there an interest for the city to administer CFD formations, or is the interest to continue to allow other districts to form those and you know, we have no risk or limited risk? And if so, the CFD formations that we've done to date have been primarily for just, they haven't been bonded indebtedness, they've been, you know, on an annual tax roll, and they've been very specific to facilities for maintenance and DIF deferral program. Is there an interest of the council to dive deeper into what a CFD means? And if so, we could set up a meeting at a future agenda meeting where we could bring in some of the professionals who could give you the pros and cons of CFDs at a deeper level than what I shared tonight. And then with that, in closing, the general direction to staff as to how we work with land developers. Do we work with them towards sparking a deal to present back to council on a CFD, or do we tell them that the city's position pretty much still is that we're not interested in administering? So that would be the first part, and I would stop now and maybe turn it over to the council.
I have a question. You said we can bring in a firm, right, to create the CFD.
Yeah.
Does that firm mitigate some of the risk associated to this, or brought to the city when we're administering a CFD? Do they have like insurance kind of thing where they, you know, they kind of put their name in the work that they are, you know, telling us this is, you know, something's good? Do they kind of,
Yeah. So
like insurance policy?
So not specifically, no. I mean, the only protection that we would have is we would enter into a professional services agreement with these 3 different entities.
Yeah.
2 of them we already have on board. We have a financial advisor, and we also have a special tax consultant. We would have to hire a bond counsel. The bond counsel is probably one of the more important pieces of this.
Yeah.
This is a duty that our own city attorney would not be able to do, and that's why we would have to go out and get a special bond counsel. And that's a good thing, because special bond counsels, this is all they do. The other, I guess, as far as protections are concerned, and there's a long history of CFDs that have not gone well, but that was then. What we're seeing, the deals that are being structured today are deferring when bonds can be paid. There's a whole bunch of tools that are put into place in a CFD today that will protect the agency from those kinds of things.
And by getting the bond counsel, he's the professional, right? She's the professional. So we wouldn't ideally have to be part of that long list of failures, right? Making sure we have, okay. I'm talking out loud and thinking through it. Thanks.
No, it's a good question, and I look at the work I've had to do in WRCOG chasing down their CFDs over in Beaumont, and I can tell you that that organization is looking at the bond, I don't know if it was bond council, but I know the bond developer, the bank that held the bonds, and all the misdeeds that were done in that city. And WRCOG is going after those banking organizations even for, hey, you should have known, you should have been upfront with us, and it looks like you're actually hiding stuff by not releasing this information. So it's important to hire the right counsel for that. It's important to hire the right people and make sure that the 5 of us know what we're doing and know what's going on and make sure that there's never a chance. What they were doing there was taking the bond money, building infrastructure in their city. The city planning director, city manager, and the city engineer were all part of a company that were then running and doing all of the engineering and design work, and taking a percentage off the top and saying, oh, it's not collusion. And the attorney sat there and said, oh, it's not collusion. Bullshit, sorry, excuse my language. And so 5 of those guys have already pleaded guilty to different felonies. 1 guy's left, their attorney. But it's amazing what a bad city can do with a tool like this that could be very well poorly misused. And I'll be darned if that happens here. And I know that if we're going to move forward with this, I want to make sure we're taking every precaution necessary, that we're using the right counsel, that we're using the right people, and that if that's the path we're going to have to go down to, see some housing tracks move forward, especially when we're talking about ones like Bundy Canyon, where you've got a lot of infrastructure that our city desperately needs. And if that's the last piece to that puzzle, I think we have to at least be willing to talk about it. And I go back to another story that I was out campaigning 3 years ago in the track on Bundy Canyon, on the south side of Bundy Canyon, down by where Walmart might be someday. And I was going through that neighborhood, and I actually had residents come out and ask me questions about their CFD that had been managed by the county. And in my opinion, managed very poorly, because these people had no idea that their CFD had been extended a few years, 5 years, that their interest rate had, gone down a little bit, but it had now been extended. So overall, they paid a whole lot more, actually. It would have been better if they left that alone. So when we look at CFDs in our city that are still getting approved but by other agencies, how are those people being taken care of? Who do when you get a phone call from a resident, you have to track down right now who authorized that CFD to begin with. Most likely it's the county, but it could also be the school district, or now the water district's getting into the game. I don't know that we want our citizens to have to play this roulette of who to go talk to. And all we're doing when we say no is send them somewhere else. So I think that's why this is coming back.
All CFDs are listed on their tax bill with a phone number.
Yep.
That they can call to get the information, but I too, like you, I see both sides, and it's a slippery slope. The council we have now, I have no problem, we'll pick good people. We'll vet them and go up one side and down the other, but there are future councils that once this is done, there could be other people, other staff members that would need keeping an eye on. So I would like to move forward, but I would like to hear some more information. How can we tighten it down where that it protects us and the citizens?
I had a question for you, Dan, when that previous thing, when you were talking about the water district doing the CFD, and it would be 4 million, and then us would be 5 million. Are you talking in the actual contract to build that piece?
Yeah, the way the water district works is their facilities come first. 51% of whatever bond capacity there is on a fully developed 275 lots for this case, for example, 51% of those at a minimum have to go to EBMWD facilities. Yeah, water and sewer and whatnot, and then what's left could go towards a road or fees or whatever else. So we didn't get to set the priorities. They basically just say, okay, here's what you get.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it would be more, well, it's definitely more of an advantage for us. So, okay, I get it. All right, that's all I had. Sounds good.
So Dan, you've got some direction, I think, to bring it back with some more information. We're cautious, we're leery, but we're willing, I think is
Yes,
where I think we're at.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very willing. So.
Okay, very good. So the second
Got
part,
the yellow light. Proceed with caution.
I've got the yellow light. So the second part of this, this is a recommended update on priorities in order of preference. So in our existing bond policy, or in our existing CFD policies, goals and policies, all 7 of these items are there. What I've done based on our current actions and what I've heard from the councils, I've reordered them and I've added some language that said that these would be our order of preference. So if we do move forward with a bond, it would have to be at a much lower level in priority. So our very first order of priority is we continue to cover maintenance and operating facilities. So that CFD that we set up for every new development to pay for all their additional maintenance services and their police and fire services, those 2 would still be our first priority. So any capacity that's there, we would make sure that our maintenance is covered first, and then if there's a balance, then we can do these other things. The next grouping of them, one is a community-wide benefit. So this is saying that one subdivision I showed you, that would be a community. So these would be improvements specific only to that community. Could it include city facilities? Could it include public utilities? Some agencies say only city facilities. Our current guidelines allow us to do city and public utilities. So we could set those. These are very general. But we could look at them and say, okay, we're going to spend so much on roads, but we really need to have sewer, so we're going to allow sewer to be included in the formula. The 4th item is any offsite supporting that subdivision or that specific plan, that specific community. So for example, if we had to take that water line or sewer line further down the road and there was still capacity left after the first 3 are met, then you could pay for those offsite facilities. The 5th item would be other facilities serving a greater benefit. That kind of goes without saying. Maybe it's a long, like Bundy Canyon Road, for example, has got a regional benefit. A portion of this could go for Bundy Canyon. More of it could go to Bundy Canyon because it has a greater benefit. Or any other facilities permitted by the Act, and there's a list. And I can drill down that for you on the next time if you're interested in that. And then the pay-as-you-go provision, I kind of spelled that out a little bit before. There's a provision that you have to have a maximum special tax. Maximum special tax will be 110% of the bonded indebtedness. Our current priorities allow for that. So for example, one of the things that you said, how do we protect ourselves from a failed CFD, is we delay or defer when you can actually start the bonds. So for example, maybe we say at 40% of the rooftops already have to be up before you can pull bonds, or certain things have to occur before you pull bonds. But that doesn't mean at day 1 when we form the CFD that we start collecting the special tax. So during that period of time we're collecting the special tax. Those proceeds then under the pay-as-you-go provision could then front load, for example, the building of the major infrastructure that would support that facility. So those are currently in our goals and policies. I've just reprioritized them. The second portion is I've updated our special tax requirements. What's currently in our goals and policies is one word, and it's Consumer Price Index, CPI. And then it's very broad. And that's okay in a policy to be very broad. What I'm suggesting is that now that we have actually formed a CFD for services, we can be a little bit more specific for those items that we've already established. So for example, CFD 2013-1, we set CPI or 2% for the maximum tax as an annual escalator for services, for maintenance. CPI or 5% for police and fire services. And we did that percentage because we were anticipating a 5% increase in the annual contract. So that's already in there. The DIF deferral program that we just had the second reading on tonight, that established in that one agreement the LAIF rate, because that was an appropriate rate for that type of development. And so what we're just going to say is a percentage for the maximum tax would be determined by the DIF deferral program. It's an agreement that would come to you should we do that. They're all within around that 2% range, right? And then for capital facilities, should we do that? We haven't done that yet. we're saying we're gonna set that as a solid 2%, because that tends to be what is happening throughout the whole industry. We've checked with several. James is actually, I should probably have had James do this presentation, but he weighed in on all the details of this. So, what the recommendation tonight was to discuss developer seeking CFD. We talked about whether we would form a CFD, and then the 2 updates. These 2 updates that I gave to you, we don't have to take a formal action on them tonight. Those updates I wrote in the event that we would not take on bonded indebtedness. Those I think we can act right off. Should we bring back to you the formation of a CFD using bonded indebtedness, I guess what I would like to do is have, once we bring on a CFD team with the bond council, is have them review our goals and policies and give some other suggested tweaks. I feel confident with what I've given you today. We could enact that. I could bring that back as a resolution. But in light of us having a discussion about maybe doing the next step, I may defer that. We'll bring all that to you at a later date. And so with that, that concludes my staff presentation.
Very good. I think you already got some direction, or council direction, or questions, anyone?
No, that sounds better. I like to, see all the information.
Yep. All right, thank you, Dan.